Chris woke up early, feeling deeply content. He glanced toward the garden, smiling as he thought about Leora. Their bond had grown stronger than ever after overcoming so many challenges. Today was important. Chris and Leora planned to speak before the Zephyrian Council once more to solidify their alliance fully. He dressed carefully, choosing clothes that showed respect and seriousness. Outside, Leora waited patiently, calm and confident as always. She smiled gently when she saw him, her eyes warm and encouraging. "Ready?" she asked softly. Chris nodded, returning her smile. "With you, always." They walked side by side toward the council chambers, the streets filled with Zephyrians quietly watching them pass. Chris felt their curiosity and hope. They were symbols of unity now, their relationship representing the peace both worlds sought. Inside the council chamber, elders sat waiting calmly, eyes attentive. Chris felt slightly nervous, but Leora's steady presence reassured him. They stood before the elders, ready to speak openly and honestly. An elder stood slowly, addressing them clearly. "Chris Adams, Leora, we have watched your bond grow. Yet some still doubt our alliance. Today you must convince all." Chris stepped forward, taking a deep breath. "I arrived on Zephyrus unsure and afraid," he began simply, sincerely. "But here, I've found understanding, respect, and trust. Leora, and I have shown unity through friendship and love. Our peace is real." Leora spoke gently but with strength. "My own fears and pain held me back, but Chris's kindness healed me. We are stronger together, our worlds united." Their heartfelt words filled the room with quiet contemplation. Elders whispered softly, reflecting on their sincere speeches. Finally, the head elder stood firmly, speaking clearly and powerfully. "Your unity has convinced us deeply. We must stand together openly and clearly." Chris felt relief and joy flood. Through him, they had succeeded. The council fully supported their bond and the peace it represented. As they left, Chris glanced at Leora, smiling broadly. "We did it," he said softly. She smiled warmly, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "Yes, we did." Their victory brought great joy to Zephyrus. Celebrations filled the streets, music and laughter echoing everywhere. Chris and Leora walked together, enjoying the peace they had helped create. Later, during quiet moments in their quarters, Chris spoke softly to Leora. "I never imagined peace like this could feel so good." She smiled warmly, leaning closer to him gently. "It feels right because it's genuine. We built this together." Days passed happily. Chris and Leora enjoyed quiet times in the garden, shared meals, and gentle conversations about their future. Yet Chris sensed Leora had something on her mind, something important she had not shared yet. One evening, as they sat quietly beneath the stars, Leora finally spoke softly, her voice slightly hesitant. "Chris, there is something important I haven't told you." Chris turned to her immediately, sensing the seriousness in her voice. "You can trust me," he reassured her gently. She looked into his eyes deeply, her voice steady. "There are still those who oppose peace secretly. They may act again." Chris took her hand softly. "We will face them together, just as before." Leora nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. "Yes, but it may mean difficult decisions." Chris squeezed her hand gently, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Whatever comes, we'll handle it together." Their peaceful days continued, but both remained watchful and prepared. Soon enough, whispers reached them of more plots against their alliance. Chris and Leora remained united, quietly preparing for any danger. One afternoon, a message arrived urgently, calling them to meet the council immediately. They hurried there together, finding the elders tense and concerned. "Another threat has surfaced," an elder explained seriously. "Some still aim to disrupt our unity," Chris spoke confidently. "We stand strong together. We will face them openly and bravely." The council agreed, determined not to yield to fear. Chris and Leora offered plans for strengthening security and reassuring the people. In the following days, their plans took shape quickly. The people of Zephyr stood behind Chris and Leora, inspired by their courage and unity. Slowly, the threat seemed to diminish, defeated by their unwavering resolve. During these trials, Chris and Leora's bond only deepened further. Each challenge brought them closer, making their partnership even more powerful. They stood openly. Together, their commitment clear and strong. One quiet evening, after another successful day, Chris and Leora sat alone in the garden, reflecting on their journey. "We faced so much," Chris said softly, gently holding her hand. "I never imagined we could achieve this kind of peace." Leora smiled warmly, leaning gently against him. "Together, we've overcome fear and hate. Our unity is stronger than ever." Chris felt deeply content, grateful for the chance life had given him to find Leora. They had turned forced duty into real love, building a peace that inspired both there. Worlds dot as night fell quietly around them, Chris turned gently toward Leora, his voice soft and sincere. "I love you," he whispered gently, finally voicing the depth of his feelings openly. She smiled softly, her eyes filled with quiet joy and affection. "I love you too, Chris, more than I ever believed possible." Their shared words brought quiet happiness, sealing their bond completely. They had faced challenges bravely, supporting each other through everything. As they sat together, stars shining softly above, Chris knew their future was bright. Challenges might still come, but their unity would endure, guiding them clearly. Forward. Chris had arrived uncertain and afraid, forced into a union he didn't choose. Now, beside Leora, he understood that the alliance had become the greatest gift of his life. Their shared journey was not just one of duty, but one of true love and powerful partnership. In the peaceful Zephyrian night, Chris held Leora gently, feeling deeply content. Together they had overcome fear and built trust. Their bond was real, powerful and lasting, an enduring testament to the strength of unity and love. Chris knew they would face whatever the future held, always together, forever stronger as one. Chris woke up feeling optimistic and calm. His new closeness with Leora made each day brighter and more meaningful. He quickly dressed, eager to start another day on Zephyrus. As he stepped outside, he found Leora already waiting, smiling gently. "Good morning, Chris," she greeted softly, her voice warm. "Good morning," Chris replied, matching her smile. "What's planned for today?" "The elders wish to speak with us again," Leora said calmly. "They feel encouraged by our unity but want assurances," Chris nodded. He understood the elders' caution. Peace was fragile, and trust had to be strengthened continuously. Together, they walked to the council chambers. Inside, the elders awaited, their expressions serious but hopeful. Chris and Leora took their seats, listening carefully as the elders spoke. "Your growing bond gives us hope," an elder said clearly. "Yet we must be cautious. Some still fear the alliance and may try again to break it." Leora stood gracefully, addressing the council firmly. "Our unity is real and strong. We must face challenges openly and without fear." Chris stood beside her, speaking clearly. "We won't let fear stop us. We're committed to peace." Their words reassured the elders, who finally nodded in agreement. Chris felt encouraged by the council's renewed support. After the meeting, Chris and Leora walked slowly back, discussing their progress. Suddenly, an alarm sounded loudly, echoing through the streets. Chris's heart raced. "What's happening?" he asked urgently. Leora looked around sharply. "Another attack," she said, tense but calm. "We must find safety." As they hurried towards shelter, a group of attackers appeared, rushing toward them swiftly. Chris felt panic rising but stayed close to Leora, determined to protect her. "Get behind." Leora commanded firmly, taking a defensive stance. Chris hesitated, unwilling to let her face danger alone, but knew she was skilled. He stayed close, ready to support her. The attackers were relentless, pressing forward aggressively. Leora fought bravely, using her skills expertly. Chris helped, defending himself as best he could. Despite their efforts, one attacker broke through. Lunging directly toward Chris. Seeing the threat, Leora moved quickly, stepping between Chris and the attacker. She blocked the attack fiercely, but was severely wounded in the process, falling heavily to the ground. Leora! Chris shouted desperately, rushing to her side as guards finally arrived. Capturing the attackers. Chris carefully lifted Leora into his arms, his heart filled with fear. "Hold on," he whispered urgently, carrying her quickly to medical care. Doctors swiftly took over, treating Leora's injuries. Chris waited anxiously outside, pacing and filled with worry. Hours later, a doctor finally approached, speaking quietly. "She'll survive," he said gently. "But recovery will take time. She must rest." Relieved but still worried, Chris quickly went to her side. Leora lay quietly, her eyes closed, breathing softly. Chris sat beside her, gently holding her hand. Determined not to leave her alone. Days passed slowly as Leora recovered. Chris remained close, comforting and supporting her. He spent countless hours quietly by her side, learning more about her past and dreams. Their bond deepened further during this difficult time. One evening, as Chris sat silently watching over her, Leora finally opened her eyes, looking weak but alert. "Chris," she whispered softly, her voice gentle and tired. Chris immediately moved closer, smiling warmly. "I'm here. You're safe now." Leora squeezed his hand gently. "I wanted to protect you," she said quietly. "You mean so much to me now." Chris felt warmth flood his heart. "You saved my life again," he said softly. "I owe you everything." She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with gentle affection. "You have already given me so much, Chris, more than I ever expected." As Leora slowly recovered, Chris remained by her side, helping her regain strength. Their days were filled with quiet conversations and shared laughter. Each moment brought them closer, building a bond that grew stronger despite the challenges they faced. One afternoon, as Leora felt strong enough to sit outside, they returned to the hidden garden she had shared before. Sitting quietly, Chris finally spoke openly. "Leora, when you were hurt, I realized how deeply I care for you," he said sincerely. "You've changed my life completely." Leora looked at him warmly, her voice gentle and clear. "I feel the same, Chris. Being with you has healed old wounds I thought would never close." Chris reached out carefully, taking her hand gently in his own. "Together, we can overcome anything." She nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "Yes, together." Their newfound closeness inspired others on Zephyrus. The elders saw their genuine unity and felt renewed confidence in the alliance. Support for peace strengthened among the Zephyrians, hope spreading throughout the city. Finally, fully recovered, Leora stood confidently before the council again, with Chris proudly beside her. She addressed the elders with strength and conviction. "Our unity has faced great trials," she said firmly. "Yet, we stand here stronger and more committed than ever." Chris spoke clearly beside her. "Together, we can build lasting peace. Trust and understanding will guide us forward." The elders responded warmly, moved by their sincere words. The meeting ended with renewed commitment and determination for peace. Afterward, as they walked slowly home, Chris felt deep contentment. Their challenges had tested them greatly, but their bond had emerged stronger and more meaningful than ever. That night, sitting quietly together under the soft glow of Zephyrian stars, Chris finally felt truly at peace. He turned to Leora, speaking softly. "We started as strangers, forced together," he said gently. "But now, I can't imagine my life without you." She smiled warmly, her eyes filled with quiet joy. "Nor can I, Chris. You've given me hope and love I never thought possible." Chris reached out carefully, gently pulling her close. Together they sat quietly, enjoying the peaceful night and the comforting presence of one another. Chris knew challenges might still arise, but with Leora beside him, he felt ready to face anything. Their unity was now stronger than any treaty, deeply rooted in trust and genuine affection. Looking up at the stars, Chris felt hopeful for the future. Together, they had transformed the Forced Alliance into a true partnership, creating peace and understanding between their worlds. With Leora by his side, Chris knew their shared journey was only beginning, filled with promise and endless possibilities. Chris awoke to the soft morning glow, feeling more confident after surviving the attack. He sat up, thinking deeply about Leora and the trust growing between them. Today marked another important gathering with the Zephyrian Council, and Chris felt ready to face it alongside Liora. After quickly dressing, Chris stepped outside and found Leora waiting for him, calm and poised. They exchanged quiet greetings and began walking side by side towards the council hall. The streets seemed busier, filled with Zephyrians who watched them curiously, aware of recent events. Inside the council chamber, elders sat quietly waiting. Patiently, Chris and Leora took their seats at the front. The atmosphere felt tense but hopeful. An elder stood, speaking clearly. The attack against Chris Adams has revealed a troubling divide among us. Today we must decide how to proceed. Leora rose gracefully, addressing the council confidently. Unity remains our goal. We must address fears openly and build stronger bonds. Chris admired Leora's courage as she spoke. When it was his turn, he stood nervously but determined. I understand your fears, he said slowly, clearly. Humans have made mistakes, but together we can learn and create peace. Leora has taught me much already. Let us learn from each other. His simple, heartfelt words brought gentle murmurs of approval. As the meeting continued, Chris noticed the council becoming more receptive to their ideas. By the time it ended, Chris felt cautiously optimistic. As they walked back together, Chris glanced at Leora. Thank you for supporting me in there. She nodded gently. Your words were honest and true. They needed to hear that from you. Days passed peacefully as Chris and Leora prepared for another important ceremony. Their bond deepened quietly through shared moments of study and conversation. Chris found himself growing more comfortable around Leora, her presence reassuring and calming. One evening, after finishing preparations, they sat quietly in the garden. The sky above glowed softly with unfamiliar stars. Leora broke the comfortable silence gently. Chris, there's something you should know, she began quietly. Her voice soft but firm. Chris turned, sensing her seriousness. You can tell me anything. Leora hesitated briefly, then spoke softly. My family was destroyed by war with humans. I lost everyone. It's why I've been cautious around you. Chris felt deep sympathy, understanding now her distant behavior. I'm truly sorry, Leora. It explains so much. She met his gaze steadily. I agreed to marry you because I believe peace is more important than my past pain. Chris reached out slowly, placing a comforting hand lightly over hers. Your strength inspires me. You've made a huge sacrifice. For the first time, Leora did not pull away. Instead, she squeezed his hand gently, her voice barely above a whisper. It's been difficult, but your kindness has helped me heal. A deep warmth filled Chris at her words. He smiled softly, grateful she had finally opened her heart to him. In the days following their conversation, Chris and Leora grew closer, sharing more openly about their lives and hopes. Chris found himself genuinely enjoying her company, looking forward to their quiet moments together. One afternoon, Leora invited Chris to a special place she had never shown him before. They walked together until reaching a hidden garden, secluded and peaceful, filled with vibrant flowers and calming streams. This was my family's favorite place, Leora explained quietly. I wanted to share it with you. Chris looked around, touched by the gesture. It's beautiful, he replied softly. Thank you for trusting me with this. She smiled gently, her eyes warmer now. You've earned my trust. They spent hours quietly exploring the garden, exchanging stories and laughter. For the first time since arriving on Zephyrus, Chris felt truly happy and at ease. He realized he cared deeply for Leora, not just as a partner in peace, But as someone important in his heart later that evening, Chris sat alone, reflecting on his feelings. He knew their marriage began as an obligation, but now he felt genuine affection. He wondered if Leora felt the same the next morning as they prepared for another official event. Chris decided he must be honest with Leora. He found her standing quietly near a large window, gazing thoughtfully outside. "Leora," he began softly, his heart racing. She turned, sensing his nervousness immediately. "Is everything all right?" Chris took a deep breath. "I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done. You've changed my life in ways I never imagined." She listened carefully, her expression gentle and patient. "What I'm trying to say," he continued quietly, "is that I care about you deeply, not just because of our duty, but because of who you are." Leora stepped closer, her voice soft and steady. "Chris, I feel the same. You've shown me kindness and understanding when I needed it most." Relief and happiness surged through Chris. He reached out gently, taking her hands in his. "Together, we can build a true partnership." She nodded warmly, her eyes bright with shared feeling. "Yes, Chris, I believe we can." Their newfound closeness became evident to those around them. The Zephyrians noticed a genuine warmth between Chris and Leora, inspiring renewed hope for unity. During the ceremony that evening, Chris stood proudly beside Leora. Their speeches were sincere and their affection clear. Elders and citizens alike saw the strength of their bond, understanding the power of their partnership. After the ceremony, Chris and Leora returned quietly to their quarters. Alone together, they shared gentle smiles, comfortable in their new closeness. "We've come a long way," Chris said softly, his voice filled with quiet joy. "Yes," Leora agreed gently, "and our journey has only just begun." As they looked out at the peaceful Zephyrian night sky, Chris felt content. Though their relationship had started as an obligation, it had grown into something real deep and meaningful. Chris knew challenges still awaited them, but with Leora by his side, he felt ready. Together, they had overcome fear, suspicion, and loss. Now united in trust and affection, they stood prepared for whatever the future held. Confident in the strength of their bond, that night, Chris lay awake briefly, grateful for the unexpected path his life had taken. Peace had been the initial goal, but love had become the true prize. With Leora beside him, Chris felt hopeful about their future, knowing that together, they could bridge the divide between their two worlds. Chris woke early one morning, feeling restless. After a quick breakfast, he decided to explore more of Zephyrus on his own. He walked slowly through quiet streets, nodding politely to passing Zephyrians who had grown used to his presence. Yet, as comfortable as he was becoming, Chris still felt a nagging sense of unease. He wandered into an open market filled with strange and colorful goods. As he admired the intricate craft, he overheard hushed voices nearby, speaking urgently. Though he could barely understand their words, he caught his own name clearly. His heart began racing. Carefully, Chris moved closer, pretending to examine items while straining to hear better. Two Zephyrian men spoke in low voices, unaware of his presence. "He's dangerous," one whispered. "Humans cannot be trusted. The alliance is foolish." "We must act tonight," the other responded, his voice tense. "Removing him will end this foolishness quickly." Chris's blood ran cold. They were talking about killing him. Quickly, he turned away, walking as calmly as he could back to his quarters. Fear twisted his stomach, and he knew he had to tell someone. But whom? He hesitated briefly before deciding he had no choice but to trust Leora. She had saved him before. Perhaps she would listen again. Chris quickly found her standing alone, near a small fountain, deep in thought. "Leora," he said softly, trying to keep calm. She turned, noticing his anxious expression immediately. "Chris, what's wrong?" "I overheard two Zephyrians," he whispered urgently. "They plan to kill me tonight. They oppose the treaty." Leora's eyes narrowed sharply. She took his arm and guided him quickly to a more private area. "Did you recognize them?" Chris shook his head. No, but their voices sounded serious. Leora's face grew stern, her voice steady and strong. I feared this might happen. Some factions oppose unity, seeing humans as threats. What should we do? Chris asked, feeling helpless. Stay close to me, she said firmly. We will not let them succeed. Chris nodded, feeling safer by her side. Together, they quickly went to inform trusted elders of the danger. The elders seemed deeply troubled, but some appeared doubtful. Are you certain of this? One asked Leora, looking skeptically at Chris. Leora stood tall, her voice clear and powerful. Chris is honorable. If he says this happened, it did. We cannot ignore threats to peace. Reluctantly, the elders agreed to increase security. Chris felt somewhat relieved, but remained nervous. The day passed slowly, tension growing with each hour dot as evening fell. Chris and Leora returned quietly to their quarters, careful and watchful. Guards patrolled nearby, alert but discreet. Chris paced anxiously, unable to rest. Suddenly, the lights dimmed unexpectedly. Chris felt his pulse quicken, realizing something was wrong. Leora, he called softly, turning to find her already alert. Stay behind me, she whispered, stepping protectively in front of him. Moments later, the door burst open, and two figures rushed inside. Chris immediately recognized their voices from earlier. One attacker lunged toward Chris, but Leora swiftly intercepted, knocking him aside expertly. Chris watched, frozen in awe as Leora skillfully defended them both. Her movements were precise, calm, and strong. One attacker managed to slip past, heading directly for Chris. In panic, Chris grabbed a nearby decorative object. Swinging it defensively, it connected solidly, sending the attacker sprawling to the ground. Guards quickly arrived, restraining both attackers firmly. Breathing heavily, Chris turned to Leora, gratitude filling his eyes. You saved my life again. She looked at him quietly, a hint of warmth appearing briefly in her eyes. We protected each other. Later that night, the elders gathered, clearly shaken by the attack. They listened carefully as Leora described the events, her voice steady and clear. When she finished, a heavy silence filled the room. This confirms our worst fears, an elder finally admitted quietly. There are those among us who would risk war rather than accept peace. Leora stepped forward confidently. We must stand strong. If we falter now, peace will never last. Chris watched proudly as Leora spoke, her courage inspiring the elders around them. The meeting ended with renewed commitment, determined to strengthen the alliance and root out any remaining threats. Returning to their quarters later, Chris felt exhausted but relieved. Leora walked silently beside him, her expression thoughtful. When they arrived, Chris paused outside her door. Thank you, he said softly, not just for tonight, but for believing me. Leora hesitated briefly, then gently reached out, touching his hand lightly. I have always believed in you, Chris. Trust is difficult, but you have proven yourself honorable. Chris felt warmth surge through him, surprised and grateful for her rare gesture of affection. Your trust means everything to me, he replied. Earnestly, she smiled softly, her expression gentle. We have much to face together. Rest well. Chris nodded, watching her disappear quietly into her room. Alone, he sat heavily on his bed, thinking deeply. The attack had revealed serious dangers, but also a growing bond with Leora. He knew he could not face these threats alone. Together, perhaps, they could overcome the fears and prejudices that stood between their peoples. Slowly, Chris lay down, exhaustion finally claiming him. Sleep came quickly, but his dreams were filled with visions of battles, alliances, and a future where peace was more than just a fragile promise. In the center of those dreams was Leora, her strength and kindness guiding him forward. When morning came, Chris woke determined. They had survived this attack, but he knew there would be more challenges ahead. Yet with Leora beside him, he felt stronger than ever. Their unity was no longer just symbolic, it was becoming real, powerful, and meaningful. Stepping outside, Chris took a deep breath, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He knew the road to peace would not be easy, but he had hope. He believed in their alliance, in Leora, and, for the first time, truly believed in himself. Together, they would build a new future, one step at a time. Chris woke up early, feeling anxious about another day on Zephyrus. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his eyes, still getting used to the strange lights that softly filled the room each morning. After a quick breakfast of unfamiliar fruit and bread, Chris dressed neatly and stepped out, determined to learn more about his new home. Outside, the sky glowed a soft shade of purple, casting gentle shadows on the white buildings. Zephyrians moved quietly through the streets, giving him brief glances but otherwise ignoring him. Chris took a deep breath, feeling lonely but trying to stay positive. A voice startled him from behind. "Chris, good morning." He turned and saw Leora standing quietly, her blue eyes calm and unreadable as usual. "Good morning," Chris replied, managing a friendly smile. "I was just looking around." Leora nodded slightly. "Come with me. You should understand our customs better to avoid mistakes." Chris followed her willingly, grateful for the opportunity. They walked side by side through wide, elegant streets until they reached a large building filled with Zephyrian artworks. The walls were lined with detailed paintings depicting Zephyrus' history. Leora began explaining quietly, her voice soft but clear. "These paintings tell of our conflicts and triumphs. Understanding them helps in understanding our people." Chris listened closely, amazed by the skill and beauty of each artwork. As she spoke, he began noticing that Leora's voice softened slightly when describing certain events, especially those involving peace and unity. After several hours, they left the building and sat near a small garden filled with strange yet beautiful plants. Chris hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Leora, thank you for showing me this. It helps me see your people differently." She looked at him briefly, her expression unchanged but her voice a little softer. "It's important you know us. We need peace. Too much pain has been caused by ignorance." Chris noticed a flicker of sadness cross her eyes. "Did you lose someone during the wars?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "My family, all gone now. It's why this treaty means so much." Chris felt a deep sympathy. "I'm sorry, Leora. I didn't know." She shook her head gently. "It's not your fault. You weren't part of it. But it's hard not to remember." They sat quietly for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. Chris felt a new respect for Leora and her strength. He understood her distance now, seeing it as protection against further pain. As the days passed, Chris spent more time learning Zephyrian customs and traditions. He did his best, making fewer mistakes and earning nods of approval from the elders. Leora remained polite but distant, though occasionally she offered him small gestures of encouragement. One evening, a major ceremonial gathering took place. Chris wore formal Zephyrian clothes, feeling awkward but determined. He entered the large hall beside Leora, noticing how elegantly she carried herself. Calm and poised despite the crowds watching. As they stood waiting, Chris saw a Zephyrian elder approach. The elder greeted them formally, then suddenly began speaking rapidly in their language. Chris felt his heart race, unable to understand the questions aimed at him. Panic rose inside him as the elder grew impatient. Voice rising slightly, Leora stepped forward calmly, responding quickly and clearly. Chris watched her carefully manage the conversation, her voice steady and firm. The elder finally nodded, satisfied, and walked away. "What happened?" Chris whispered nervously. "A test," Leora replied quietly. "They questioned your knowledge of our history. I answered for you." "You saved me again," Chris said softly, feeling embarrassed but grateful. "We must appear united," she reminded him gently. "Any weakness could threaten the treaty." Chris nodded, understanding her better now. "Thank you, Leora. I'll keep learning." She glanced at him briefly, a hint of softness returning. "I know you will." Days turned into weeks, and Chris slowly felt more accepted by the Zephyrians. He spent many hours studying their language, traditions, and history, hoping to become worthy of his role. Leora still kept her distance, but began spending more time guiding him personally. One afternoon, as they practiced formal greetings, Chris accidentally stumbled over his words again. Frustrated, he sighed deeply. Leora unexpectedly touched his arm gently. "It takes time," she said softly. "You're doing well." Chris smiled slightly, feeling encouraged. "It's because of your help. I couldn't do this alone." She looked away briefly, her voice softer. "You are not alone. We're in this together." Chris felt warmth spread through him at her words. Though still distant, Leora's kindness was slowly emerging. He hoped it meant she was beginning to trust him more. That evening, Chris decided to visit the garden alone, enjoying the quiet peace it provided. He sat on a bench, watching the unfamiliar stars, wondering about Earth and the friends he had left behind. Suddenly, he heard soft footsteps approaching. Turning, he saw Leora standing hesitantly at the garden's entrance. "May I join you?" she asked quietly. Chris quickly nodded, making room beside him. "Of course." She sat gracefully, her gaze on the distant stars. After a moment, she spoke softly. "Do you miss your home?" Chris nodded slowly, appreciating her rare moment of openness. "Yes, very much. It's strange here, but I'm adjusting." She glanced at him thoughtfully. "You've been brave. Not everyone could adapt as you have." "You've made it easier," Chris admitted, his voice gentle. "Without you, I would feel completely lost." For the first time, Leora smiled softly, warmth briefly reaching her eyes. "We are both lost in a way, but maybe together we can find a path forward." Chris felt his heart lift, encouraged by her words. "I hope so," he replied sincerely. They sat quietly under the stars, a new sense of understanding gently bridging the distance between them. Chris felt hopeful for the first time since arriving on Zephyrus. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but perhaps, slowly, they could truly unite, making their forced marriage something meaningful beyond just duty and politics. As he looked at Leora, calm and beautiful beneath the alien sky, Chris felt determined to keep trying. They had started as strangers, joined only by duty, but now he saw the first glimpses of a partnership that could genuinely bring peace to their worlds. He silently vowed to keep working, not just for Earth's sake, but also for the chance to build something real and lasting with Leora. Chris sat quietly in his small apartment, staring at the letter lying open on his table. He read it once again, hoping the words might change, but they stayed the same. Chris had been chosen as part of an intergalactic peace treaty. His mind raced with questions. He wondered why someone ordinary like him, an engineer who mostly kept to himself, had been selected. Chris had never been important or special, just a regular guy trying to make a living. A sharp knock at the door made him jump. He took a deep breath and slowly walked over, opening the door cautiously. Two official-looking people stood there, a man and a woman, both wearing serious expressions. "Chris Adams?" the woman asked. Chris nodded, feeling nervous. "Yes, that's me. We are from the Global Space Authority," she explained in a calm voice. "You received our notice?" Chris glanced back at the letter, then nodded again. "Yes, but I don't understand why you picked me." "It's about unity and peace," the man said firmly. "The Zephyrians chose you themselves from our records. You fit their profile." "What profile?" Chris asked, confused. "Peaceful, steady, cooperative," the woman replied, checking a small tablet she carried. "They believe your temperament will help make the treaty successful." Chris sighed. He knew there was no real choice. If he refused, it could harm Earth's chance at peace. With a heavy heart, he agreed, knowing his life would never be the same. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and preparations. Chris learned as much as he could about Zephyrians. They were humanoid but taller, with pale skin and deep blue eyes. They lived far away on the planet Zephyrus, known for its advanced technology and mysterious customs. Chris tried to remember everything he learned, but his mind struggled to keep up. Finally, the day came when Chris would meet Leora. his future wife from Zephyrus. He dressed carefully, nervousness knotting his stomach. The officials guided him into a large room with high ceilings and gentle, glowing lights. Chris stood silently, his heart pounding in his chest. A door opened at the far end of the room, and several tall figures entered. Chris immediately recognized Leora, her presence strong and clear among the group. She walked gracefully, her pale skin almost glowing softly under the lights. Her long silver hair was neatly arranged, and her deep blue eyes were calm but distant. Chris stepped forward, offering a polite smile. "Hello, I'm Chris." Leora looked at him silently for a moment before responding softly, "Leora." The formalities were brief. They exchanged a few polite words in front of the officials, who seemed satisfied. Chris could feel Leora's indifference, making him uneasy. He wondered how they could possibly make this work if she wouldn't even look at him properly. That evening, Chris found himself alone in his quarters, a simple but comfortable room provided by the Zephyrians. He stared out the large window at the unfamiliar stars, feeling incredibly small and alone. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He turned and opened the door to find Leora standing there. For a moment, they both remained silent, uncertain how to start. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. Chris quickly stepped aside. "Of course." Leora entered gracefully, her eyes scanning the room briefly before returning to Chris. She seemed unsure, though her expression stayed calm. "I wanted to speak privately," she finally said, her voice gentle but distant. "You must understand, this marriage is purely political." Chris nodded. Slowly, "Yes, I figured as much." "Good," Leora continued evenly. "We should both be clear about this. Our worlds need peace, and we are merely a symbol of that peace." Chris felt disappointed, but tried not to show it. "I understand. I'll do my best to respect your wishes." Leora looked at him thoughtfully, then offered a slight nod. "Thank you, Chris. That is appreciated." She turned and left quietly, leaving Chris alone again. He sat heavily on the bed, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was clear that Leora had no interest in friendship or companionship. He was simply a part of her duty, nothing more. Days went by, filled with small ceremonies and formal introductions to Zephyrian society. Chris did his best to keep up, feeling overwhelmed by their strange customs. At one event, he mistakenly bowed instead of raising his hand as greeting, causing soft murmurs among the Zephyrian elders. Embarrassed, he stepped back, unsure what to do. Suddenly, Leora stepped forward calmly, addressing the elders directly in their language. Chris didn't understand her words, but he could see their reactions soften. She spoke with authority and calm, quickly smoothing over the awkward moment. After the event, Chris thanked her quietly. "I appreciate what you did back there." Leora glanced at him briefly. "It's important they see us as united. Mistakes happen." Chris smiled slightly, feeling a tiny spark of hope. "Still, thank you." For the first time, he thought he saw a faint softness in her eyes, but it vanished quickly. "You're welcome," she said simply. That night, alone again in his quarters, Chris felt a new determination. He wouldn't give up. Even if the marriage was political, he hoped to find some common ground with Leora. Perhaps, over time, he could break through her distant exterior. As he lay down to sleep, he thought about the strange new life ahead of him. He knew challenges awaited, but he also knew he had to try. For the sake of peace, for the sake of Earth, and perhaps even for his own heart, Chris resolved to make the best of this forced union. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to bridge the gap between two worlds, starting with the one person who seemed most unreachable,